think as people settle down, we'll just kind of talk about the session. I think it's a very broad discussion. It says the new rules of success, rejigging the retail thinking. And what I really did is used the IRF agenda itself as a surrogate and said what really happened. I mean, I compared 2 years agendas of IRF, the same forum, and really compared what really happened. I'm just going to read out some things which are different. So let's say the keywords this time is predictive retailing. There's big data, tap to pay. These are words from the agenda. You might have seen them or come across them somewhere or the other. There's biometric authentication, sixth continent. I'm still to figure out what it is. Internet of Things and phygital stores. Yeah. And what we really keep reading about things changing and very rapidly changing is, I think, manifested in the agenda itself of the two IRFs. If you really see the agenda of 2014-15 and 2015-16, there's a rapid change. And I guess the time really, the time given to us really to deliberate on what those changes are. There couldn't have been a more richer panel than this. I think you know all the people sitting here. We have fashion as a category, we have food as a category, we have jewelry as a category. And we also have someone who's really been doing a lot of franchise retailing for many, many years. So what I'm going to really do is put it open. I really asked my co-panelists to really share some insights real from their trade. And then maybe after 35 minutes, we kind of open the thing for questions. So any one word which comes to your mind for rejigging? Don't say muffin.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe rejigging, I would say it's either a disruption, a complete disruption, where you bring in new kind of thought like e-com, which has started for the last couple of years. But on the other hand, if I look at even the physical retail, rejigging, in my view, would mean innovation. So you have to keep bringing innovation in everything that you do so that the customer keeps coming back to you. You provide freshness to the store, you provide freshness to the merchandise that you offer, you provide freshness to the visual merchandising that you do, you provide new furniture, those kind of things, so that the customer, when he comes to you, he keeps feeling that there is something new in it for me. It's not the same thing that you go. So it's like, that there is an old saying say that even if you love something very much, you will very fast get bored of it if you do it repeatedly again and again. And because of that, even in retail, in my belief, innovation is extremely important. Or if I take the example of Lacoste, the brand that I represent, so we keep doing these new things every now and then, whether it is furniture. So we have recently introduced a new concept of furniture, which is called standard. We work on different versions of furniture, and every 3 or 4 years, we change the complete store look. We were working on white furniture earlier, then we shifted to 2.6 version, then we shifted to standard, and now we're talking about standard plus already. When a customer enters a store, he does not look only at the merchandise. He wants a complete experience, how the store looks, how he is serviced from the store executive that you have. Now that brings a lot of freshness, apart from the merchandise itself. Merchandise, if I say, if I take the example of fashion industry, there are two types of broad categories in which fashion industries can be segmented. One is a very stable fashion conscious market in the space in which a brand like Lacoste plays. On the other hand, we have fashion forward, maybe the space in which Winnie the bestseller works. In that space, maybe in fast fashion, the change, the rejig has to happen, let's say every 15 days or every 1 month. But in a space which is not fast fashion, which is fashion conscious but not fashion forward, in which Lacoste plays, I would say that every month we also need to keep on changing the store look, the merchandise, the visual merchandising, how the store looks. That is what I would say is the rejigging in my opinion.
Sure. So I'm picking two things from you. One is refresh. And you made somewhere a comment saying if it remains the same, it's not going to hold interest anymore. So what I'll do is we picked really 6 trends as a panel, and I'm going to touch on each of them. And maybe I'll start with you, Vinny. So I think I'm really putting across the trend of eat, sleep, share. And that I read about how the new generation has really these 3 needs. How much do you eat, how much do you sleep, and how much do you share? And I think when every time I go across some of your stores, especially the Linking Road one, I think it's quite iconic to say. I mean, the whole store comes across very iconic. how do you indulge a generation which really believes in this? And I have to take up the point of freshness from him. How do you indulge a generation which believes in eating, sleeping, and sharing?
See, I'll put it a little more differently. I'll say that this generation of consumers whom we are addressing is actually rejigging everything for us. They are on the digital domain all the time, and they are forcing us to change and rejig everything which we do, whether it's our stores, whether it's our inventory, whether it's our fashion, whether it's our customer service. And as you said, eat, sleep, share. Share is what they are doing all the time. And we do a lot of customer understanding of what are they doing. The customer is changing so fast, and I think as brands we are slow. Okay, at times I really feel that we are slower than the customer. The consumer is changing so fast, and also the mobile with 3G, 4G, the consumption of what's happening globally is actually pushing us to rejig the way we think business. And our business is a little more challenged that way because we are in a fast fashion. So we need to change, not on a monthly basis, but at times on a daily basis or weekly basis, because there are new trends coming in. Okay, there's something happening on the ramp in New York or somewhere Paris, and we need to adapt to it, because if we don't adapt, the competition which we work with is going to adapt it quickly. So I think that's changing us, and that's where stores like Linking Roads help us understand what the consumer is going through. And it helps us provide the new rejig customer service, the experience, because the small stores are not able to give that experience to a consumer. So we ask a lot of consumers, why do they come to Linking Road? We have 28 stores in this city, so which is a store almost near to their house everywhere. In every mall we exist, almost every high street we are there. But they still come to Linking Road for the experience. I don't know how many of you have seen the Super Saturday. We have queues for hours for people to get in. That's not the experience, but that's the product and the value which is reaching in the entire concept. So I think if you look at it from a brand angle or a fashion angle, I think the consumer rejig is forcing us to act fast, come up with new ideas, come up with new marketing ideas. I think someone said digitization, a lot of that is done. Today, there's no way out. If you look at what e-commerce has brought in, I think everyone is now not speaking about product discounts. They're speaking about trends, and they're moving because the customer wants to listen to that. And if you are not part of that story, then you're not there. So I think that rejig is happening at that level.
Sure. And specifically about customers sharing with each other, I mean, and you said Super Saturday, is there somewhere where you use today videos get shared, today views get shared. How do you kind of use that?
If you look at Super Saturday, it's completely a digital property. We do not do, if you've been into Bombay, you would not have seen a lot of ads about Super Saturday. It's a property which we start popularizing on a Monday, and it comes on a Saturday, completely digital. We get an ad on Saturday in the morning, but the queues start at 12 o'clock in the night. We open the stores 24 hours, and there's queues. And it purely happens through the digitization, because we used last year videos. We create stories. So every time there's a new theme, which we do. So last year was something else. This time is something else. So last year we used the smileys. This year we said, because we realized the customer was, so this time we said, are you super ready? Because we said, we've invested a lot in the back end to be ready for you, so are you super ready? So we try creating new themes, and that gets shared, and that viral impact helps us generate footfall. So that's, I think we do a lot on that stuff.
Sure. Good. And those who not been to Super Saturday, please go to whenever your next Super Saturday is, Vineet. I've seen it. I've seen the queues. So Venkat, coming to you, I think if I to really study Tanishq as a brand, and I think the whole vision was to bring the brand as what's written in your website as a composite avatar of many more fashion brands. And I think you seem to be kind of getting almost there at a tipping point. I'm saying it as a student of retail. When I see all huge stores coming up in various places, you're the tipping point of possibly looking at consumption of jewelry in a very, very big way. So would you like to comment on this trend which we picked up of mass affluence? I mean, is there really mass affluence rising? And how do you kind of see it in the brand world for you?
I think one of the recent ads which sort of summed up this mass affluence very well is the ad for Audi, which said, the headline said, don't wait till you're 40 to buy an Audi, to own an Audi, you know. So it speaks, you know, if you can today, if you want to buy an Audi, you know, before you're 40, you know, the mass affluence is really a big wave in this country compared to, you know, 10, 15 years back when you were actually saving the money of today for the expense of the future. People are today spending the money of the future for the enjoyment of today. So it's a dramatic shift that has happened. But at the same time, there are many, many categories and brands which are fighting for a share of this mass affluent. And one of the things that we have certainly embarked on is to give whatever we are presenting, whatever we are launching, a stronger meaning, and not just a better product or a better overall service, but a stronger meaning. And let me just illustrate that through an example. Now, all of us are aware about solitaires, and solitaires are a very desirable product, in general. Every woman, would love to own a solitaire at some point in time. And, but at the same time, solitaires are a reasonably undifferentiated product category by design because it's a timeless product. And if you differentiate it, it doesn't remain timeless, okay? So the whole power of the solitaire is also in its timelessness. And in a way, the weakness, because one brand solitaire versus another brand solitaire, what is the difference? Why should I buy this versus that? So we created a program very recent, about 6 weeks old, called GAM, G-A-M, Gift a Moment. And the special meaning that we brought into this is romance, recommitment to a relationship, and the memories that come with it. So what we do is, when you buy a Tanishq solitaire, so we offer this program in 12 cities in partnership with the Taj. So you buy a solitaire, and depending on the price you pay, you get invited with, as a couple to a particular hotel. So it could be the West End or the Vivanta, depending on the price that you pay for that solitaire. And you get the works. You get a Jaguar XF coming home to pick you up. You get, depending on what your wife, girlfriend, mother, whoever likes, what kind of songs. Is it Mohammed Rafi, Kishore, Cliff Richard, whatever it is. So there is a small band which is put together, a guitarist, a vocalist, and you give, the farmaish is sort of given to them, and the hotel knows your, the cuisine, they know your, sun signs. So depending on the category, you get special, napkins which are monogrammed with, Scorpio, Sagittarius, whatever it is. And then the guy comes and plays your song. It's almost like the husband playing some romantic songs to you. And it's an unbelievable evening. In most of the cases where we have executed this, the customers said, you sort of rekindled our love for each other. Okay, so it's and the solitaire is naturally a right product for something like this, because I cannot imagine a husband taking out his wife on the 10th anniversary and gifting her, for example, an iPhone in a romantic way. And much as the wife would love an iPhone, but it's not a romantic, product. A solitaire is a romantic product, and we are all now starting to discover or rediscover romance as a nation. We are not an expressive bunch of people normally, but these are now becoming part of our lives. And therefore, something like a romance or a commitment which gives a different meaning to solitaire, or glamour, which gives a different meaning to a high-end jewelry through an association with a celebrity designer. So these are new meanings through and the innovation that he was talking about, but applied in a very different way, as opposed to just a better product, a better store, a better display is of course something to do, but the competition is so intense today that may just not be enough. So something which is tangentially, sort of targeting the customer is one aspect of mass affluent targeting that I would like to share.
So I want to ask a question to the audience. How many of the women have a solitaire already? Okay. How many men have bought a solitaire for their wives? Many more. Look at that. Huh? He's got some free solitaires outside. Wait for it. Okay. So Mohit, on to you. I think lunchtime is perfect time for us to think of Mohit. I think whenever I go to your website, I think I'm always extremely encouraged by the kind of food which you get to see. And I think I think your brand talks to be India's pioneering omni-channel gourmet retailer.
That's right.
Yeah. I always have been wondering whether it kind of gets a critical mass or not. What I want to really ask you is a trend which we kind of discussed about trending up. I think normally most of the discussion which we have during times of economic churn is trending down. But I think your format, whatever I've seen, is always encouraging to people to trade up and say kind of get better food, better deliveries. So can you talk a little bit about this trend of trading up?
Sadashiv, to begin with, I want to just go back a little, and when you spoke about rejigging and what does rejigging mean to you, I just want to start there. To us, rejigging has always not just meant change; it has always meant evolution in some sense. And when we say evolution, it also means that you don't leave what you've learned, from your past endeavors or from your past efforts. You take the learnings from there, apply those, and then move forward. So it's that's an important part for me. And that's something that we have consistently applied to all aspects of the business, whether it's layout designs, whether it's the way we treat our people, whether it's the way our people treat our customers, and so on and so forth. That's part one. On the incidence of, let's say, trading up, when you mentioned trading up is there in all aspects, whether it's customers trading up from their local jewelers to Tanishq solitaires, whether it's customers trading up to from their Hondas to Audis, and so on and so forth. It's pretty much evident and across different segments of the economy at this point of time. Is it evident in our stores, and is it a mass trend, so to say? I think for us, to begin with, the fact that the assortment that we carry itself is reflective of the fact that we are completely hooked on, or we are completely hooked on our business to trading up. We do not, for instance, keep products that are mass products. National leading brands, I mean, no disrespect meant to any leading brand, but we don't even stock them for the simple reason that we have positioned our business on on differentiation. So there are differentiated products, there are products which are not available so easily, hard to find products in the country. Those are the kind of products that we stand for.
So if I want red label and I don't get it in a store, you're okay if you...
I'm okay with that. Okay. I'm okay with that because we have not positioned our business as a business that meets 100% of a customer's needs. You can you can get all kinds of wines for sure, maybe not whiskeys, but I'm sure. So no disrespect meant to any brand, and of course every brand has a role to play, but as a business we've completely tuned ourselves into catering to differentiated needs of consumers. Do we see within that, do we see trends of trading up? Yes, even within that we see trends of trading up. During the break, I mean, you were there. For example, we don't even stock many of the oils. Now, a grocery store is typically known for the variety of sunflower oil and groundnut oil and so on and so forth that it stocks. We are known for the variety of olive oils that we stock, and so on and so forth. And this goes across categories. How do we make customers trade up within that? I think what we've learned is over the years that there are three segments that we need to play in. You just touched upon three segments. You spoke about eating, sleeping, and sharing in the context of the audience. You'll be surprised that the context that we speak about is cook, eat, and learn. So as a brand, if we can play in each of these three segments, so you play in the segment where you are offering products that are ready to eat, where the customer doesn't have to do anything. That's the eat segment. The cook segment is ingredients that the customer can cook with, and then learn. So apart from offering all ingredients in your assortment and all kinds of products in your assortment, can you also make the customer learn something? And our biggest learning over the last couple of years has been that the more we are able to give them that learning, the more we are able to share our knowledge and expertise with customers, the more we are able to bump up sales of specific categories. Just to give you an example, so the kind of products that we carry in our stores are sometimes very, very niche. So how do you really bump them up? Do you really bump them up by giving discounts? Or do you bump them up by running programs of the kind that he spoke about? And the big learning is that the more programs you run, the better you succeed, the more you succeed. So we carry a fruit called avocado in our stores. Now, avocado is not necessarily a mass fruit. It's not something that 99.5% of the audience would be ever buying for their daily consumption. What we figured is that if we are able to tell customers how to use it, what to do with it, and so on and so forth, we are able to attract, maybe instead of 0.5%, we are able to take up sales to 5%, which is still small, but fact of the matter is that that's the kind of business that we are. The more we share, the more we make customers learn, the better we do, and so on and so forth. And that's the big learning, that it's not really about discounting, it's about sharing, it's about learning.
think two trends I'm picking from you. One is really you're almost to the tune of saying I'll exclude, but stay anchored in trading up. More positively, stay anchored in trading up. And I think you kind of echo what Vineet said about sharing, and you call it learning in your scheme of things. Rajesh, I think I wanted you to touch upon this whole trend which we see is a 52-week fashion festival. I think your brand claims to be life is a beautiful sport. Now, I think are the rules changing? I mean, there was, say, many years back, one would look eagerly to the page 3 of a certain publication and saying, okay, what am I going to see, really see as fashion icons? Has that changed today? Man? Because I think every time I pass by your stores, I think they look different. So do you use that insight? Do you use that trend to really make things far more vibrant? You use the word for Vineet as forward fashion, but in some way, do you really use it in your brand? Would you like to share?
Of course. One trend that we have seen changing in India is catching up very fast with the Western culture also. So there is a completely different market for traditional attire. At the same time, Western wear is being accepted more and more in Indian culture now. Even some of the corporate, when I'm talking about Western wear, I'm not talking about the formal Western wear. I'm talking about smart casuals, which is being accepted across the board now. Even in some corporates, even the big corporates, they have started accepting Western wear casual, smart casuals as part of their professional attire now. This is one thing which is catching up very fast with the Western culture as well. Now, when you talk about Western culture vis-a-vis India, India already has evolved to a great extent, but at the same time, it is also evolving day by day. Now, our customer, when we see our customers, they have traveled across the world or they are exposed to the global trends either through the internet or the media or their own travel. And they expect exactly the same experience that they get anywhere else in the world, whether it's in Paris or USA or China. They expect that our brand should present exactly the same merchandise. It should give them exactly the same experience in terms of the customer service also. So we follow something called retail excellence. That's a term that we use globally for Lacoste as a brand, which consists of not the product. Product is a given that will need to be changed every now and then within the season also. But this retail excellence does not consist of product. It consists of the visual merchandising, the customer service, and the store upkeep and maintenance. If a customer does not get the experience and that experience does not keep getting changed as per the global standards, the customer will not walk in again. We thankfully see a lot of loyal customer base despite whatever is happening in the market today. Our customers keep coming back to us again and again. Now that can be done only and only if we believe and if we actually deliver life as a beautiful sport. We believe that, we indeed believe actually the phrase that you use and the phrase that is the topic of the day, that that's a 52-week fashion festival. It's not that you give something to the customer and you don't bring a new fashion, the customer will not come to you. So you have to keep giving new offerings and give the complete experience to the customer. India, in my opinion, is already celebrating that 52-week fashion festival. It's not something in future that this will happen. Of course, there will be evolution, new things will keep coming. But India is already experiencing that 52-week fashion festival, whether it is jewelry or whether it is apparel or whether it is the other lifestyle products. And the customer more and more is demanding that whatever offering is there globally, that has to be there in India also.
Before I come to Isaac and Vijay, I want to just provoke the panel on something. I think I heard him say we are okay to kind of stay focused in a certain set of products. I'm provoking. And second, you said that there's a certain experience which will be exactly the same. I mean, in our attempt to rejig and maybe possibly push on consistency, are we slowing down somewhere? Because we also, along with that kind of excluding, we're saying, okay, we'll not do this, we'll not do this. I mean, are we slowing down? Are there many more opportunities which could have been unlocked, but we have put ourselves conditions and say, aise hi karenge? So what's the panel say? I mean, I'm accusing that maybe we're going a little slow. Because the topic said you're going to rejig. By putting all these constraints on us, are we slowing down ourselves in some way?
No, in fact, if I were to take this question, maybe other panelists can also take it later. See, irrespective of whatever happens, Lacoste as a brand, if I take Lacoste as an example, despite the fact all the rejigging, all the innovation, all the new things, all the fresh things that are coming, we believe that we still have to remain attached to our DNA. our DNA, which started in 1933, is joie de vivre. That's joy of life, the relaxed elegance. If we change that completely, we will lose the brand completely. So the brand DNA has to remain intact. We need to remain attached to our roots. Otherwise, the authenticity will go away. So when you say slowing down, I don't think it's a slowing down. It's staying with your brand DNA, staying attached to your roots. Then only you can grow. Otherwise, it will be like going up free anywhere and everywhere. Then you will lose the brand identity completely.
On that, yeah. So I think what I think Rajesh has said is very true. I think it's the issue of how do you express it. And I think one of the prime example is really the Taj hotels. So if you look at most Lux hotel, whether it's Four Seasons, you take any of the hotels, you have a fairly standardized layout of the hotel no matter where you go. You know where the bathroom will be, the look, feel, everything is by and large defined. If you look at Taj Hotel, each of the hotel picks up something which is unique from the location where it's situated in. So, you know, a Taj Hotel in Jaipur would be very different from the Taj Bengal, would be very different from the Taj in Bombay. And therefore, it's an expression of, you know, taking the DNA of the brand one step forward. So you can still creatively express and enhance who you are as a brand. I think Starbucks does it the same way. So if you go to each Starbucks in the country, they've got this unique design element which is very different. It's an international brand with a touch of Indianness. And I think that's really, I think that's one way to break the boundaries in innovation for the brand.
Agree with Rajesh that possibly
Yes.
we're not slowing down.
I think it's an issue of expression.
Okay, fair.
I also completely agree with what Rajesh said because I don't believe that rejigging is about changing everything through a disruption.
Sure.
I think it means evolution, which without losing your core brand identity. So even as a brand, if I stand for let's say differentiated food or fine food or gourmet food, whatever you may call it, and I am plugged into the socio-economic trends that may be happening. Or the way the customer is evolving or the way the customer is changing. My business will evolve to mirror that. It does not mean that my brand will lose its identity. So from a differentiated food retailer, I suddenly wouldn't become a mass food retailer. I would remain differentiated. My channels may change. I may become from a physical retailer to an omni-channel retailer. I may, if today olive oil becomes mass and canola oil comes in, I may go in that direction. But I will remain differentiated without losing my brand identity.
Can I add?
Yeah, Vinny.
Hello? Yeah, can I? It also depends on what customer are you managing. If there's youth and they are continuously changing, and if you don't change, they're going to desert you. So the customer in Lacoste is, evolved customer is seen is a little more older than a customer I cater to. So in their case, it is possible to stick around and they will not feel it slow. But in a case like ours, if we don't do it, they'll find it as super slow. So we have to change. So it depends on which customer are you catering to also. So a Taj caters to a very different customer to what a Marriott or a Four Seasons caters. So it's also depending on what customers are you catering.
So maybe I ask the audience, how many of you feel that retail as an industry, and not specifically the gentleman sitting here, how many of you are happy with the kind of innovation which is happening in the last 6 months, let's say? A show of hands. Any innovation? Promotion, product line, discounts, offers, advertising? Okay. So I kind of get very few hands up. So maybe it's for us to really go back and think about what the pace expected is. And of course, you are consumers as well as retailers yourselves. But we'll park the discussion towards the end. I'll come to you, Vijay, in terms of using digital as a medium. And I think Vinny touched upon it when he started off with what they do in Jack and Jones. And we feel that increasingly you see the kind of blogs which have come about. You always see digital acting as a large source of word of mouth. Very difficult to quantify. The media experts will all be up in arms if I start quantifying a value to it. But how do you see in your brand how word of mouth could really be used to rejig, and especially a model like yours?
Absolutely. And I think the question which you asked earlier and the response you got is a great reflection of the fact that we can here sitting down as brand owners, as retailers, talk about product, about experience, about design. But what the consumer experiences is the ground reality. And I think, therefore, it's not about rejigging. I think it's about transformational. And I think how the consumer interacts with the world itself has changed. And I think I could split the consumers into two broad levels. One is really the migrant or immigrant onto the digital space, which is a large number of people who've been born post the internet coming into the space, and one is really the native, or people who've been born into the digital space. And how they interact is very, very different. So at two broad levels, I think one is the trend in both what we are saying is that the attention span is very short. The need for experience is much larger. The willingness to flirt and immediate gratification is very, very large. So I'm saying that's at the superficial level, and that's a ground reality. At the other level, I think, and what's really interesting is the fact is that they're looking at a deeper connect with the brand, with the proposition which they are with. And I think, what Venkat, you mentioned about, your love for the solitaire or romancing the solitaire. And each of the panelists have spoken about, I think everybody's looking at a larger connect. So that's one thing. Aura is a diamond-centric brand. The chances are that you buy a diamond once a year, maybe 1.5, 18 months. And if you look at it, how many of you recall an ad you've seen this morning of a car? Does anybody recall? Of a house? The chances are that you don't recall it is because you're currently not looking to buy a house or a car. And in a category which is 18 months away or 12 months away, how do I engage with the consumer? Because if I'm going to come back and try and say that Aura has got this great brand proposition on day one when you're looking to buy tomorrow, it's not going to happen. And I think in our category of jewelry, I think word of mouth has always been a very, very important platform. And I think today digital allows you in a meaningful way to be engaged with your consumers over a far longer period of time. And the other interesting thing is, I know it's a little outside what we are discussing, but if you look at omni-channel or we look at offline and online, in the United States, which is a fairly well-developed market, 60% of the offline purchase is done through research on digital or online. So all I'm just saying is that one of the biggest shifts which we are seeing from a consumer perspective is this entire interaction with the online space.
So I think I picked a word about you almost mentioning digital is seeding for future consumption, especially in residential jewelry for all those projects. Isak, to you. I think you told me that you really had a huge amount of experience in franchise development, and that's possibly something which we in the panel hasn't spoken about. I think when I go back and study what your company stands for, it really talks about the women consumer a lot. I think when we were discussing in a cabin, in a room a short while ago, we said everything has a cost, and we spoke about linking road at rent and saying everything has a cost. And I'm sure part of the cost is also borne by the franchise owner. So can you share some of the insights on franchise development? If one has to really rejig, especially in a market like ours, which is at the tipping point of explosion in consumption, how would you really build any insights to make much more richer and more rigorous franchise development?
Okay, hello. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. I'm not very familiar with the Indian market because I haven't been here for 5 years now, so it's my first trip in 5 years, so I'm quite ignorant about the local market. But in my actually I'm working now in a company named Hocare Group, where we are based in Saudi Arabia, and we have like 86 different franchise models. We have more than 2,000 stores, 500,000 square meters of retail space, so quite big in 22 countries, but not in India so far. So, but for my previous job also, franchise is a business that first you have to have your success story, and then people want to copy it. So unless you have something successful in your hand, you cannot do franchise, as far as I know. Secondly, it's a business that you can easily expand your business with a franchise model, cheap way, because you don't invest your own money, you invest the franchisee's money. But the hard part of the opposite side is that you need to keep on watching how they're doing the business. Because if you don't control the franchise business for 6 months, the business can be completely out of tune, and you cannot even recognize what you are trying to sell. So for me, a franchise business is something that, as I said before, that first of all has to be a successful story, and then you have to have a good team with you to watch and to control your franchisees, so the business cannot get out of control, let's say.
I think all of you touched upon some of the other enablers for rejigging. We didn't speak about how to stay competitive. I mean, does that matter at all when you're staying rejigging? Or should we kind of carve out our own niche and say, this is the niche I'm going to be in? What do you think of competition? Especially, I think many of you are slugging it out on the same roads and same high street and same malls. How do you really see competition? And maybe Venkat, for you, it'll be I don't know who the competition for you would be, but how would you say, does that staying competitive remain somewhere in the entire space of rejigging for you?
Yeah, very much so. I think in our industry, for a long time, we remained the only brand, but certainly in the last few years, there has been a lot of activity, and more chains are building themselves into brands. But the key to this would be understanding which customer we created our brand for, why is that customer seeking to buy our brand, and therefore building that bridge and not get spooked by anybody who's a large operator in that industry is not necessarily a competitor. Chain could be larger also, but it doesn't matter as long as you figure out whether they are a competitor or not. But once you have figured out that they are a competitor, certainly the watch that you keep on that brand and your customers connect with that brand or chain, depending on the category, is certainly becoming very, very crucial, because the availability of information to customers today is very, very high, and therefore the customers would like to extract the maximum value out of a particular purchase, and therefore they consider all the alternatives. And therefore you certainly need to be on your toes on constantly delivering that that value, which so we are discovering that. So certainly competition within the category has intensified in our case.
And you think it's an important...
It's a very, very important attitude of an organization to remain competitive, even though your actions are finally driven by your customers.
So I would just like to add to that. So as far as we are concerned, we consider competition is actually essential. As long as it is healthy, there must be competition. If I take our example as a brand, we entered India very early in 1993, when there were very few international brands. Actually, there were practically one or two you could count on fingers. At that time, there was practically no competition for us. However, we found it very, very difficult to survive at that time, because even to price our products was a difficult task at that time. If I take the example of early 2000, our polo, a plain classic polo, we priced it at about 850 rupees. And it was very difficult to convince people to buy that polo at 850 rupees, because there was no competition. People were not exposed that one could buy a polo 850 rupees, whereas you can buy other similar kind of products at 200 rupees or 300 rupees. Today, if I see that thought of buying such expensive product has gone away from the market, and I take an example of footwear. We introduced footwear about 5 years ago in the country, and we did not have to think twice before pricing those footwear, because footwear pricing was already established in the market. The Nike or the Adidas, they're already established. The footwear, a good footwear, a good shoe, if you want to buy, you will have to spend close to about 6,000 to 8,000 rupees at that time. And we did not find it difficult. So in our view, competition actually increases the size of the pie itself. So they don't take away your customer, they bring more customers into the fold who become more aware of the brands. And that actually increases your own customer base also. So the competition, in my view, is very, very important, as long as it is healthy. That's a proviso that I would like to add. Unless the competition also starts getting into the unhealthy practices of, let's say, heavy discounting, or doing something which is not the brand parameter, then it really starts hurting.
Let me ask you competitor now.
No, he is not my competitor. In fact, we are in the different space. So I don't think either of us can consider us competition to each other.
Hello. One, we don't compete, but I think we compete on a category and not as a brand. But I think today, for us, competition is about being relevant. Okay, and it's no more about product or pricing. I think it's being relevant to the consumer. Because even if you have the greatest product, if you're not relevant, you're not in the game. So I think our competition is changed to relevance and not to brands or to category. Though we will compete, that's our business, because finally the product is the same, similar rather, not same. But I think relevance is more important for our business.
So I'll pick two words now, transformation, evolution, which our friends brought here. And I think I was quite amused, I would say, when one of my colleagues, who's around 35, 36, was told by an employer saying he's too old. Saying you're good, but you're too old. And now, we didn't speak about people as a panel. So I think for evolution, transformation, I presume that whole transformation is taking the teams along. Would you like to share anything which you've done to really, keeping rejigging as a theme, rejigging as a theme in retail, anything which you've done for people to kind of keep pace, make sure that they are on their toes?
So I can share, because we have a very young team. Our average age in the stores is about 19, 20s.
Are you 35 years old?
35 years old. I'm old in my company. Actually, I'm one of the oldest in the company, I believe. But it's about being relevant, so I think in the mind I'm still young. I believe so, hopefully. But I think, as you said, getting teams and being there is so important. And we realized this when we were starting our new incentive policy 3 years back. And someone came with a beautiful idea that after a year, if the guy remains with us, we should give him a bike. Okay, and yeah, we said it's a brilliant idea. If an employee stays and he's able to deliver some numbers, why shouldn't we give him a bike? But then because of other reasons, we decided not to do it, and we did a nice one which gave him cash. We realized people had bought in 6 months second-hand cars like Hondas. Okay, because for us, a bike at that time when we were young was very relevant, but today's generation, bike is no more relevant. He gets the bike when he's in school. Okay, so people are changing, the employees are changing, and I think that's where this rejig is so much important in our thought process in terms of policies, in the way we hire people, and in the way we treat. If you don't want to treat them like partners, I think employees don't want to stick around for long. Though I think different businesses will have different, but I think in the fashion business, it's become like that for sure.
Any inputs from you? Because food, I guess the transformation could be very, very tough.
Specifically with respect to people, right? Yep. So with respect to people, I think the challenges that he's mentioned are pretty much the same. The way people have evolved, I mean, it's as fast as how customers have evolved, and their expectations are completely different, very, very at a very high level, and consequently, attrition levels tend to be very high in the food and grocery industry. I'm sure you face that as well. What we've learned is that people are not just looking at remuneration as the only thing. So apart from remuneration, there is also respect, there is also reward, and there's also learning. So if they believe that they're adding value to themselves apart from the salary and apart from the money that they make, they tend to stick around for longer. So if you're able to to continuously add value to them in some or the other way, either through your own training or through external training or whatever it is, they stick around with you long. So that's the thing that we brought about.
So, to make people excited and make them continue to remain excited, what we have probably done, and it has worked wonderfully well for us, is that we keep changing the portfolio. So if I take my own example, with a formal educational background, I'm a chartered accountant. But I was given this role of heading the front-end company. Now that gave me an idea that if it can give me so much of kick when I'm heading a different kind of a thing. So we started this idea of changing the portfolio within the employee base also. So if I take an example of one of my colleagues who is actually in the audience right now, he was earlier with a retail planning job. He comes from a fashion background earlier. His formal education is fashion. But somehow we felt that he's getting complacent with his job or he's getting bored with his job. So we offered him, at the very first opportunity, we offered him and shifted him to projects. Now that created a lot of excitement in him, which we could see immediately. After he performed very well, then we gave him an additional portfolio of new business development also. Similarly, for another colleague of mine, he was only into the operations, the front-end operations, heading the boutique, etc. And we saw a lot of good performance from him, and we added new roles to his portfolio also. Now, these kind of things we keep doing in the company, and that we see brings a lot of excitement in our colleagues. So that's how probably we could rejig and do it very, very successfully in our company.
So on that note, where he says keep people excited more and more, I think I'll throw it open to any questions for the panel. My request is when you're mentioning your question, just say your name and whom you're specifically addressing to.
This is Uday Wagre from Hyderabad, and my question is specifically addressed to Tommy Hilfiger. Sorry? I'm sorry. I came late, sir. Okay, now let's talk about keeping the customer excited from the visual merchandising point of view. So some of the changes I've seen radical across brands is keeping the customer level excitement up in terms of visual merchandising, leading to inline shopping. So, and that's been across. So how relevant is that in terms of countering the threat of online shopping?
In terms of online shopping?
in terms of online shopping?
Okay, you want to take? Okay, you're not online now. Okay, so you can't answer it. Okay, I think whether it's online, offline does not matter. I think we have a phrase in Hindi, "Jo dikhta hai, wahi bikta hai." So it's the same thing. It doesn't change. The basics remain same of retailing. Whether you go offline, you go online. If your product is not visible, okay, you're not there. In the online space, it's much more tougher. In the offline, it's far easier because you come to a shop, you see the brand, and you are there for captively. In an offline, you're competing with hundreds, okay, similar products, and that's where how you shoot the product, how you're writing about the product. It's all about content then, and then being visible. So if people think just listing brands, you will be able to do business, it's not going to happen online. Okay, so you need to continuously work with the partner of how to increase your business. Visibility is the most important. And again, like in offline, location is more important. I think in online also location is very important. Is your banner up there? Is your brand up there? And if it's not there, the business is not there. So I think it's the same till today, whether offline or online.
So I'll just add to that, and I'll tell you the importance of visual merchandising with the help of an example that we experienced very recently. See, we have long sleeve polo also. Then we saw that the sales are declining consistently for long sleeve polo, and we were a little worried. And suddenly we saw one of our international creatives where we engaged a new model. That model, when he wore a long sleeve polo, he did not keep it here. He just pulled it back a little and kept it here. So we changed our visual merchandising in the store on the mannequins, and we pulled the long sleeve polo up to this length. We saw 20% jump in our sale in our long sleeve polo just because of that visual merchandising. So that's how important a visual merchandising can be. The objective has to be very clear. If you want to invite the customer, make him come from his home to the stores, you have to do the ATL activities, you have to bring him to the store. But once he is in front of the store, your visual merchandising should make him invite into the store and ensure that he remains within the store very happily. So the visual merchandising, to answer your question, is extremely important, and we've seen real-time life examples where visual merchandising helps increasing the sales considerably.
My name is Adarsh Gupta. My question is for all the panelists.
Can you keep the mic a little closer?
Yeah. There's a very eminent panel and represented by companies who have been offering a good package to consumer with the brand and have been delivering ROI to shareholders on year-on-year basis for many, many years, and today are very successful and well established.
Aditya, can you come to the question?
How do you face the challenge posed by the e-commerce growing at very fast rate and taking to and going to take 2-digit share within next 2 to 3 years without really expanding the market and sharing the market developed by brand like you?
A lot of smiles on the panel.
Sure. I think I'm better equipped to answer that question because we are not online currently in India. So the impact of e-com can be felt by us directly. First of all, I would like to tell you that e-com indeed is a wonderful channel. It allows you to reach out to those customers who do not have access to your stores either permanently or temporarily. When I say permanently, a niche brand, a affordable luxury brand like us, we can't afford to be everywhere in the country, so we have very limited presence, and that's by design. But there are customers who do not have access to those stores because they live in different places. They don't have access to our stores permanently, I would say. There's a different kind of customer set. Most of us are in corporate sectors. We work throughout the day, and end of the day when we reach home, we do not want to go out shopping. And those are the customers I place them who do not have temporary access to our doors. E-com allows that set of customers to reach out to us and allows us to reach out to those customers. So hence, to prove that e-com is a wonderful channel. Now, having said that, in my view, e-com in its current format is not e-com. It's not the war between e-com and physical retail. It's a discount versus non-discount as we speak today. Discount or anything of that sort does impact a real retailer who does not want to discount. So I don't think e-com in its current format is sustainable for a long period of time. Now, having said that, it does impact our sales also when everybody starts discounting, looking at e-com only. So it's not only e-com. Looking at discounting on e-com, most of the other brands have started discounting in the country, and that is what has a direct impact on a brand like us. To answer your question, it does have an impact, but a short-term impact. Because we are also now planning to go on e-com, but not on a discounted format. So keeping that in view, our growth is remaining consistent. It will remain consistent, though there is a slight disruption for a little period of time, yes.
I have a different take on e-com. Okay, 20% of my business comes from e-com. It's a lovely channel. Okay, and if you're not on e-com, then you're not in the business. Again, it's being about relevant and rejigging your business. It's a model which will exist. It's another distribution model. You will have to play the game by the rules of the game. If it is discounting, you play it rightly, you will get the business. Secondly, it's not going to go off. Okay, you might reduce from 20% contribution to 12, 14, 15, depending on what will happen. Globally, evolved markets, I'm sure you can say, is 25, 28%. Some people are predicting it to become 30, 35% over years, but it's going to remain. So I think, why should we think it's a competition to us? It's our business. They're helping us reach to many more consumers, as Rajesh said, and we have to play the game right. Or again, as I'm saying, Behti Ganga hai, haath dholo. They are ready to do so much work for you. Why don't you want to go get those customers? All the time we are in this mode, oh, we will lose our brand if we go online. Nothing will happen to you. More customers will see your brand, more business will come to you. Don't worry. It's more advertising. I don't know if the panel disagrees. We could discuss about that, rejigging.
This is a fight we had an hour ago. So you just provoked the fight again.
Hello. Hi, my name is Prasad. Just to continue the discussion on e-com, like the trend in India in e-com, if I look at it, it's very counterintuitive. I mean, all the online retail companies which are started by somebody who do not have experience in retail. For example, if you look at Flipkart, maybe someone like Chroma could have started it. If you look at Myntra, someone like Future Retail could have started it. So, I mean, there are a lot of examples. So, why not these offline players starting their own portals? Of course, I mean, I know that most of you, like Godrej Basket and all, Nature's Basket have started. But do you see the trend moving in this direction? More and more branded players would be entering into e-com. And do you see it would be happening in an organic route or inorganic route?
I think we have all, as retailers, a lot of baggage, and that's why we could not come with this idea. Good thing is someone came with that idea. At least, I don't know how many $1 billion of businesses are going to happen through e-commerce. If those people would have to come with that idea, we would have all be sitting minus 20% of our top line and some bottom line also. So I don't know, rest the panel can definitely answer, but I think baggage doesn't allow us to think out of the box. There are a lot of retail companies in this country who open e-commerce and their business contribution less than 1%. Don't want to take the names, but there are many.
Just adding to what Vineet is saying, the profile of the people who are, running e-com companies is very, very different from the profile of the people who are running retail companies, including the people sitting on this. Much younger, technology-driven, so it is very, very unlikely. So even, when we look at our e-com business, it's very small, and we're not worried about it at the moment because the jewelry category is also a little different. But the kind of capability that it would take a company like Titan, for example, to do a very successful e-com play, we're not having people like that. So we have to actually acquire. Whereas if we were to take some of the jewelry e-com companies, they're run by very different people. So it sort of comes naturally to them, whereas brick and mortar comes very naturally to us. So that transition, we have to make. And for us to really gallop, we need people of that caliber in the company and not the same people who are running brick and mortar businesses.
Hi, I'm Sachit. I'm sorry if you wanted to continue. So my question basically is, there are a lot of e-com only companies in different categories. Now you're already an established brand. Do you see themselves like as a threat? People who just started selling just on e-commerce and they're growing. Second, a lot of merchandise which is available from different brands across e-commerce portal is far much more discounted than in the store. And as a consumer, if I'm very price conscious, I'll go at the store, try it out, and not buy that. Do you see as that as a threat? Maybe even motivating your salespeople over there, saying, "Yaar, इन्होंने तो e-com से देखा, मेरे सामने दिखाया," and they bought it online. And I've seen that happen, as a consumer, a lot of times. Or probably any other threat in terms of the channel that you see that could hamper your brand image as well.
See, again, it's about how you manage the channel. As I can speak about my brand and our business, can't comment on others. We don't allow partners to decide on discounting. Okay? They have to work it in consideration with us, what discount, what couponing, what has to go. But I think the biggest challenge is our model in which we operate in this country, buy and sell. खरीदो और बेच दो, उसका headache है, वो अपने आप संभाल लेगा बाद में. Okay, if you're going to do that, then he's the guy who's going to decide what discounting. If he's carrying inventory of 60,000 pieces, he is not going to wait for when you are going to discount. Okay, but in our model, we've not allowed that. The stock liability is ours. We decide the discount. So we've been able to somehow manage. I'll not say 100%, but I think we are happy with what we've done. But it depends on what calls you take as a business. Some people have done really well on that model also. Look at Puma. They've done really well. So it depends on what it is. It will impact. But some consumers will go for it, but it's going to change. The discounts will come down eventually. Okay, there's not open tap of discounts available for so longer time. If already you see couponings come down from 30% to 15%. It's going to go down to 10% very, very soon. So it's going to come with parity someday.
Too many questions on e-com, so my friend there has come on the panel to say just, now we have to wind it up. I think I'll just sum up with one of the term which, Vineet, I think you used. I think e-com is just one of the enablers. What I'm really taking from this group and what they're really telling us to rejig is to stay relevant and to stay salient. You heard words like transformation, evolution, but the key word which sticks in the mind is we need to stay relevant, whatever be the case. And I think that's the real take which I'll have for the panel. Thanks very much. I hope you had a good time.
We did, and I wonder also if in 2016 we'll all be throwing these many punches on the e-com versus brick and mortar format. I think things are changing so much, it's so dynamic. Maybe we'll have a completely different mindset when we get into this conversation next year, no?
This is my 5th year at IRF, 5th or 6th year.
Huh.
So for first 3 years, we were only discussing mall versus retailer. Okay, now we become online versus retailer. So now I will find something else.
Yeah.
Amitabh, will we find something next year? Yeah. Hopefully something on FDI or DIPP or something else.
No, but again, I would like to add there's nothing called online versus offline. I think they're both wonderful channels. Then they'll coexist.
You just have to find the best fit. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
There was a new word, inline, today.
On that note, a big round of applause, please, for our panel here. It's been a great discussion and a huge landscape, really, of the entire retail space. Thank you, gentlemen.